Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to continue on with this week's theme of vocal counterpoint, where two or more vocalists are singing simultaneously but singing two different parts or more different parts. And of course, we were going to have some Ne Obliviscaris this week, given that that's kind of one of the things they do very well, given that they have their two vocalists. So we're going to check out Libera, parts 1 and 2 today. Part 1 is titled Saturnine Spheres, and part 2 is titled Ascent of Burning Moths. Let's dive in. We have about 12 minutes of music ahead of us. Let's see what Ne Obliviscaris is bringing to the table today. Oh, yeah. The polyrhythm on the cymbals, but even the shifting cymbals too. The bass movement in the middle is great. Guitars to the side, cymbals dancing around that. Yeah, beautiful start to this. Yeah, the pacing of that push and pull, the driving, and then the release. Hanging onto that tension. Arpeggiation on the bass. All the little ornamental symbols off on the left. A little bit of a tempo shift there. It's interesting how frequently I can feel both 3 and 4 pulses, which seems pretty common in Ne Obliviscaris' works. The end of that guitar solo felt a little wistful for just the briefest of moments. Interesting that the rhythm is almost the same here, but not quite perfectly identical. have little ghost notes on the snare in there. Very spicy. Sections like this are interesting, where the guitars are texture and the focus is on drums and vocals in the center. They just take up so much of the spotlight. Yeah, where is this going? Really fun playfulness around thirds here. I'm having a difficult time really grasping what's going on here harmonically. The bass, the guitars, and the violin all seem to be slightly separated in harmony, sharing a majority of notes, but just having slightly different characteristics across the board. The build up into this humongous moment right here. The violin. The arpeggiation on the guitar back there. So good. Shifting from a growl into what sounded like a fry, that was impressive. And now we're kicking back to the intro, but with a choir. Very cool idea. bass joining on the counterpoint here. Oh, this violin melody has been played elsewhere. Oh, dude, oh, nice. In that last brief moment, the violin was actually rushing just a hair bit in front of the beat. And I love all the characteristic of that. Given that those final 2 minutes in that second part, I mean, it's just somber. It takes a motif from previously in the track and expands upon it in a bit more of a melancholic atmosphere, focusing precisely on the melody rather than everything that goes on around it. And there at the end, it's played in time so perfectly up to that point, and then it just starts rushing a couple of notes, couple of lines. Feels like it's trying to get to the end, or I don't know, maybe there's some stress, some tension that narratively it's acting more frantic than it would normally, where the rest of the line has been rather calm and measured. Lots of dexterous elements to it. There at the end, a couple of rather straightforward rhythms. They just get pushed just a hair bit. You can hear it come in just the slightest bit in front of the guitar. Ah, dude, that's so good. It's a nice little bit of narrative writing there. I'm curious what the lyrics are in this then. Why we would have reached that point at the end of the track. But let's talk about everything else. I'll tell you what. This has been Vocal Counterpoint Week. We're only 2 days in, honestly. We're just phenomenal choices so far. Yesterday's Gentle Giant, absolute masterclass in counterpoint in general, and so is this one. In fact, we're not doing anything else on this channel. Critical Reactions is now Vocal Counterpoint Reactions. I'm having such a blast with this week. It's phenomenal, dude. I'm listening to this song and I'm like, okay, it's Neo. I'm expecting strong melodic writing. I'm expecting intensity. I'm expecting vocal counterpoint. And I did get all of that, sure. But I also got just phenomenal counterpoint in general. So we do have pretty early on cleans and harshes. Now, what was interesting in this first group with it is that the cleans and harshes had like 90% the same rhythm. Sometimes where the harshes will hold out a note for an entire beat, the cleans will have 2 notes within that, half of a beat each. But those were like little ornamentations peppered in from time to time. For the most part, they were right in line with each other, but they weren't singing the same words. And this is very interesting. We'll get to the lyrics later, but I really like this idea of not musical counterpoint, but lyrical counterpoint. 2 similar, though not identical, vocal rhythms, at least in this case, since the harsh vocals are texture based, not pitch based, but the rhythms are really close to being the same, but the words aren't. That creates a really interesting theme to dive into as well, that there is synergy between these 2 parts. Usually when there's counterpoint going on, you're looking at various perspectives. You're looking at 2 totally different ideas clashing. That's usually where the counterpoint gets used. But what I really like too is in musicals. You will often find something like this where 2 people will have similar-ish vocal melodies. Maybe different pitches, maybe they're in different octaves, but the rhythmic element and the general pitch movement is going to be fairly similar, but the words will be different. And there's usually because it's 2 sides of the same coin. They're both speaking about the same ideology or the same themes or the same feelings, but they have 2 opposing relationships to that concept. And so their rhythmic element, their melodic element is going to be the same, but their lyrics aren't. And it creates that parallel between the 2 of them. I don't really see that too much outside of musicals, though. I really like that I'm hearing it here. And if anyone else has any more examples of this, maybe it's a favorite song of yours, or maybe it just popped in your head. You hadn't thought of it in so long. But me bringing it up, you're like, oh yeah, dude, that's like this one song. I would love to hear more of this, particularly outside of the realm of musicals. I do think it's going to show up more in conceptual albums that have stories tied to them, but I'd love to be proven wrong on that too. I can't personally think of any non-musical place that I've heard that happen. And I don't know, I really like it. But that's just the first time we have the dual vocals. We started off with cleans, then we brought in both of them, and then we had just the harshes. And then we got to the true counterpoint. 2 vocal lines, completely different ideas, completely different lyrics, totally on their own wavelength. But it didn't stop there. We also had a guitar lick going on here. Some nice arpeggiation going on, kind of in the background. It is left and sort of pushed to the back, but it's moving. It isn't just rising and falling on the chord, although we do have rising and falling arpeggiation, but there is melodic nuance to it. It does feel more linear than riff-based. And then, of course, on the right side of the track, there's the violin with a true blue, can't miss it, 3rd melody going on in this track. And none of this brings in the fact that the bass is down there at the low end of the song with a moving bass line, not necessarily a melody in a pure linear function, but still melodic bass writing. It is riff based, but the phrasing is rather lengthy. We're looking at like a 4-bar riff right here. So this is also providing melodic counterpoint to everything else that's happening here. And it is just phenomenal that we can have foundation and melody and harmony and counterpoint going on here all at the same time without the song feeling like it's falling apart, without it feeling like it's not supported well. It really is impressive how they achieve so many moving lines while still keeping a song that feels traditionally built. We end up doing some other stuff. There's some solos. We come back to a very similar idea of vocals, bass, violin, and guitar. And I'm just melting in these moments because I think this second time we hit this very full stack of counterpoint is also a peak. The guitars on the side are louder than ever. There's a choir going on. The drums are intense. Like, it's a really big moment. And I feel like it's impossible not to get swept up in it, at least not on a first time listening. Maybe if it's not your jam, it's just too noisy, too many layers, sure, but if you enjoy this kind of music, I don't mean like progressive, I just like metal in general. If you can stomach harsh vocals and, gritty guitar tones and darker harmonic ideas in general, I don't see how you can listen to this and not just get immediately pulled into the whirlwind that it's creating and fully immerse yourself in the emotions here. There's just too many cool things happening, and they do it. I think this is really important for Neo as well. They do it in a way that's rather palatable. Again, as long as you're a metalhead, I don't think there's much in here that's like, oh, dude, that's too experimental. That's too progressive for me. It feels like it walks a very fine line between almost a classical style of composition and that mainstream metal palatability. And it's really impressive to watch them do this constantly. I'm not going to say they're perfect at it. Their latest album, which isn't this one, is it? I don't think so. No, Exul, that's what it was. That was the one I checked out. So I haven't heard Earn. This was their one that came out before Exul. That was 5 years previous, which, I mean, you're going to write stuff like this, you're going to take your time doing it. But Exul kind of bounced off of me a little bit. Some tracks were phenomenal, other tracks were fine. I don't really think they can make a bad song. But something like this, I mean, this is just a masterclass in composition. And I kind of wish they always did this, but I mean, they're human, right? Not everything someone makes can be the most perfect thing. Now, beyond the counterpoint, which is very cool, which is very impressive, which honestly is the big reason I'm here. The other part of this is that it's extreme metal. And I don't think I ever really picked up on this as much. Like, I've talked about the drummer just being a machine, those 16th notes constantly for minutes on end. But for whatever reason, right now, I'm thinking about this music and the metal counterpoint, very cool. The softer moments, like the intro with the acoustic guitar and violin, or part 2, acoustic guitar and violin. We also have a bass section that's on the lower energy side to bring a little bit of variety to this conversation. When you take out these moments, though, and you focus on just the more metallic sounding segments, which takes up a majority of the track, a lot of it is just 16th note bass kicks, 16th note strumming on the sides, fuzzy, gritty, distorted guitars on the side. In a lot of ways, this is the foundation of black metal writing and even more extreme death metal writing. It is just a lot constantly, crafting this feeling of weight through heavy texture use and very large frequency of attacks in each bar. Now, what I like about this is that those are done as texture. They are not the lead part of the song. The melody does not come out of the texture like it does in black metal. It is there on the outskirts and can be EQ'd in a way that's kind of pushed away from your focus of listening and allows you to really dive into what I think are the core parts of Neo's writing, which is the melody writing. It's your melodic bass lines, it's your lead violins, your vocals, your guitar solos. This stuff can act as the texture, can be the spice, and never overtake the flavor palette. I think that's one thing that I really like about Neo, but it is something that I noticed here is that, well, this is kind of what I've always wanted out of black metal. Granted, I don't think I'd ever call this black metal. Like I said, it's more of an extreme death metal, but having a foundation that's very similar to black metal, I've always said that I don't mind the texture, I just need more melody in it. And that's kind of what Neo delivers. I think that's interesting, and I don't know why I've never really picked up on it until now. But I will say, in contrast to that, my favorite moments of this track, aside from the really big ending of part one, is the quieter sections, the lower energy parts. These are just gorgeous. As much as I love the writing elsewhere, the sonic textures, I feel in a way diminish it a little bit. That's not to say that the song is bad because they go in a metal direction. Simply that for me personally, I find that the nuanced writing inside of the lighter sections just works better for me. For, I don't know, probably just a sonic reason. Less aggression, less things going on. It just matches my sensibilities a little bit better. But I don't think that the writing changes at all. I think it's very similar writing throughout. The skill level, the layers, the intertwining lines, like all of this is consistent throughout every part of their song. I just personally like the sounds of the acoustic guitar, of the violin by itself without having to compete with an electric guitar or growls or anything like that. So I think that's one reason why I found part two to be so gorgeous and really connecting with it, but it's also the journey too, and I can't deny that part of it either. Part two would not have felt the way it did without the peak of part one. The metal helps elevate the lower energy sections. The lower energy sections help elevate the extremity of the metal. This is just contrast 101 right here. You write excellent dynamics into your music, and it's going to help every part of it be better at what it does. I think the last thing I want to bring up then is harmony in general. This is going to cover a few things. Emotionally, though, there is certainly a bit of darkness to this track, a lot of tension, a lot of weight. Many of the solos end up being a bit spicy. But what I think is interesting, well, spicy in a way that adds tension and dissonance to otherwise beautiful melodic lines. But what I think is interesting is that there's a harmonic variability throughout the song. There is a core chord progression, I think, throughout this track that helps tie it all together, but each individual section kind of has its own, we'll call them additional notes. If the main chord progression is a series of chords of 3 to 4 notes each, and we can build a key of, say, 5 to 6 notes out of that, what we play in the melody is going to add on to the key. And the key is just the notes that are used throughout the entire track. It is saying that, for instance, if you play the key of C major, which if you're looking at a piano is just the white notes, that's C, D, E, F, G, A, and B. No sharps, no flats. That's your key. If you play a sharp or a flat, well, you're going to be changing the key a little bit. Sometimes it's going to create dissonance. If you play a D at the same time you're playing a D sharp, that's a half step interval. That's going to be really tense. But if you have a little bit more space between it, maybe you're playing a G sharp and a D, well, that's just going to add a nice little bit of spice to your C major key. So imagine that we've built this key and we're going to add extra notes every once in a while to kind of change up the additional qualities of the sound of the song. But what I found really interesting is that whether it's the clean vocalist or the electric guitarist or the violinist, their choice of extra notes to add in to spice things up is different, but they don't change every time they come in. That is to say that both of the violin solos both used the same types of spices. They both had a specific flair that they added to the song, but that was different than the clean vocals. They had their own type of flair, but it was consistent every time they played lead. And this is a really interesting way to go about writing it because you're basically creating leitmotifs for your instruments simply by way of allowing your instruments to add very specific additional notes to the overall sound of the song. And this actually created a little bit of confusion for me at one point when I realized all these instruments were playing with the same like 80 to 90% notes. So they're all, it's not dissonant at all. There's a lot of consonant harmony going on here. It's very strongly balanced. But all of these instruments are bringing a little bit of a different flair. One's a little darker, moodier, one's a little brighter, one's a little bit more melancholic. And it's creating this multifaceted emotional component to the song when these three instruments are all playing their lead melodies. I found that to be a wildly evocative process in the composition department that I want to put into my music. That just sounds so cool because usually I'll just be like, I will write a melody and it will have some additional notes in it just to add a little spice to what's going on. And I don't really pay attention to what instrument has it. This is the melody I want at this moment. Sounds great. Here's the instrument that's going to play. I give no thought to that really, aside from like timbre. If I want something warmer or brighter, I'll pick an instrument that matches that. But other than that, I'm not really focusing too much about it. And so if I do reuse that instrument later for a lead melody, I might not even think about carrying over that specific spice. But it works so well in this context and it sounds so cool. And it's really this idea of hearing these individual solos up to a point that have given the song this emotional variability as we go through the track. And then at a moment when all of them collide and it's just such a rich emotional atmosphere to the song. And I'm like, where did that come from? Did they just add it in? No, dude, they've been building up to this. They've been leading to this moment. And it pays off so well. I love it. So coming back to the emotional component here, there is darkness in this. There is melancholy. There was even a moment I had mentioned that there's a wistfulness to the past. It could line up with the melancholy and create a feeling of regret, but there is a positivity and optimism throughout this too. It's multifaceted and complex, but regardless of how the journey is getting there, at the end, I feel it is overwhelmingly melancholic, overwhelmingly negative. Part two feels like a form of emotional defeat. And it ends on a rather somber note compared to the energy that we had built throughout part one. So that's about my thoughts on this. I could bring up the polyrhythm, but I don't have like notes in my mind of what was going on there. Just simply that I could frequently count this in 3 and 4, so I'd wager probably another Ne Obliviscaris track in 12/8. That's just a really great time signature for combining 3 and 4 pulses. And the drummer is just an absolute beast with the cymbals, and I love how they dance outside the song. I already talked about the bass with its excellent bass lines, the violin, guitars, textures, and vocals. So, yeah, I mean, it's Ne Obliviscaris, dude. It's just, these dudes are so good at what they do. I don't really need to praise the members of the band. It's sort of just implied. So, let's dive into some lyrics and see what's going on there. All right. Yeah. So regret and sorrow or negativity in general, the weight of the song, it all kind of comes through this rather nicely. Lyrically, this is a track about humanity's tendency, we'll put it, and expertise in destruction, and how we are really great at destroying ourselves too, that we will eventually be our own demise. Now, there's a lot of visual imagery in here, done very metaphorically. To kick the song off, we have where white doves fall as hammers and the wilted horses dream of lions. So white doves, peace, hammers are destructive. There also can be weapons. It says wilted horses, which I believe could be about the elderly. They dream of lions. There could be a bit of, I don't know, there's a lot of that can be read into that. My initial instinct was something a bit more familial, as lions tend to be pretty good at protecting families, but it could also just be something a bit more violent if we're going to go with stereotypical portrayals of lions in pop culture, say. So it could be that those who are old dream of war or combat. We retain this idea of horses and doves saying, to the crashing shores, hooves through bloodied tears, rising red rosarium, blossoming choirs, beatitudes of the endless end where white doves fall. So I'm not entirely sure what this means, but we do have a recurring element of red. We have blossoming, we have bloodied tears, and we do have the end that is endless, just something that continues to come. And once again, white doves are falling. Peace is falling. So if we put all this together, crashing shores also, it feels like it talks about combat, battle, wars in general, and the endlessness of these wars, of the bloodshed, where peace will never make it out. We have another color-based thing here, of the drapery, moth gray veils where the black winds rage. It mentions that this is our end design, a war on all life of our mindless vessels, death we breathe. Just talking about how well we have become accustomed and attuned to not just death in general, but our ability to bring it. The fact that we have waged war on all life. That is our design as humans. The bridge states life's demise, mechanized end design, far beyond our humanity. The growls behind it state, through the shadow of the valley of death, we bathe in blood. I think that's pretty spot on. It's difficult not to get these vibes from it. Chorus 2 introduces something interesting, though, bringing in the subtitle of part 2. It says, the burning moths, we've been set free and illuminate the way across killing fields. Once golden, what have we done? I really like this. That we are the moths. We have been set on fire. Our death is coming. There's just nothing more to this. We're trying to flee from this. And in this process of trying to escape the quick death that is upon us, we are lighting the way for those behind us to enact their violence on those in front of us. We are guiding the warmongers to new targets. We illuminate the way across the killing fields. It's poetic. We are helping kill others because we are slowly being killed. All of us have the same target on our back from the same group of people, but all of us are incapable to get away from that. It's also the idea of using humans to murder other humans while keeping, in a way, your hands clean of it. Those at the top who command the wars to be taking place rarely do the killing themselves. Yeah, it's And we even end the second chorus with a bit of, the melancholy that we see in part 2 that takes up a majority of the track. It says, "There's no more chances. Are we too late?" And then repeats that, "Are we too late?" Almost as if it's not asking the question at a certain point, but simply coming to the realization that we are, but it's too destructive to the mind to embrace that answer yet. So you just keep repeating the question. Really drives it home. There are elements of heavy weight in the music. There's elements of sorrow, regret in the music. I felt a bit of optimism in the music that I don't see reflected here, and I'm curious if I would hear that on a second time through, knowing what the lyrical themes are. But I think it's also just as equal that those brighter elements are less used, less prominent in the song, and it might even be that the heavier, more melancholic elements overshadow and swallow those moments up as a way of furthering this idea of the destructive elements of destruction. How it can take even the beauty of the world, the hope, the white doves that are showcased a couple of times in the lyrics, um, and can cause them to die, to snuff them out. And by doing that musically, removing those brighter elements with the more melancholic violin lines, with the aggression of the drums and the electronic or the electric guitars. Yeah, there's a lot of synergy here, which I expect from Ne Obliviscaris. They are a band who, as far as I've listened to, always have really strong synergy between their lyrics and their atmospheres, emotions, and even more nuanced parts of their composition. So this was fantastic. This week is going over swimmingly, and I can't wait to get to the other 3 tracks for this week. I'm excited. And, yesterday I asked, how do we top Gentle Giant? I don't think this topped it, but it definitely sat at that bar. Both of these tracks are solid 10s for this week, and I really couldn't ask for more for this theme. If the other 3 tracks this week don't even have Counterpoint in them, somehow they got voted on and they're just terrible examples, I'm still going to be happy with this week just because of Gentle Giant and Neo. So, those are my thoughts on Ne Obliviscaris' Libera, parts 1 and 2. What did you think of this track? These tracks, I suppose. Did anything stand out to you? Is there anything that you would like to add on to what I said or correct me on? Do you want to, do you have a different perspective on the song itself, a different interpretation of things? Let me know. Put all of that and any other thoughts you have down into the comment section below. Above that, in the description box, you'll find a link to Linktree. It takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all 3 of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 9 p.m. UTC, as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.